Okay, so next item to look out for that can cause inflammation is something that we do need. Okay, so our body actually needs sodium, right? So it helps us to regulate our fluid that's in our body, makes us have water. So every chemical process that's in us requires a certain amount of water as well. But with our daily diet, especially in Asia or Singapore, our average consumption of salt intake is comparison to sodium. It's about 9 teaspoons a day. And that's actually quite high based on the recommendation that we only actually recommend to have 1 teaspoon of sugar of salt. So the recommended quantity, the amount is 2000 mg, right? So when we have too high amounts of sodium, immediately our blood pressure would increase. So it's almost like, we come out from a long hour meeting. If we have like a long hour meeting, a 1 hour meeting, a very stressful meeting, our blood pressure would also increase. But long term, having high amounts of sodium puts our blood pressure on a high for even though we're awake, even though we're sleeping, these can cause detrimental effect on our blood vessels. So things to look out for, not saying that we can't have them, but just watch out on the quantity and the portions that we are having. So things like when we are cooking, try to refrain from adding too much soy sauce, too much sauces. So things like fish sauce, soy sauce, oyster sauce, okay, then we tend to put them a lot. So rather than adding sauces like this into a marination or cooking, why not taste first? So taste them and see how much sodium it is, or how much sauces that we need to add, how much seasoning we need to add. And every one of us in the family, I would say, is quite different in our salt tolerance. Okay, one person may feel like it's too bland, one person may feel it's too much. So if any of us who are influencing the kitchen and how dishes are being made, another challenge to overcome this is to add a lot of herbs and spices. Immediately when you add more of garlic, onions, coriander, spring onions, we don't have to add so much of these other seasoning. So later on, I'm going to share some of the ingredients that we can also use to accompany our herbs and spices that makes food a lot more appealing and appetizing. That's a very good statement. Jiang, yes, ramen noodles, packet powder for soup base. If you have that with you, or you can Google, or you can look at the packet, okay, per serving, and look at how much sodium they contain. Ideally, let me go back to that slide. Ideally, we should have less than 2000 mg a day. So having a look at that amount of sodium there, then you let me know whether you think it's good or bad. Well, I mean, if we're gonna remove a lot of food that is our favorite food, okay, we're not gonna enjoy ourselves anymore, right? So there are ways to go about there. So once we are aware and being able to understand where are these sources of sodium or sugar is, we definitely can make conscious choices in how often and frequency that we're gonna have. So instead of putting the entire packet of powder in, for example, you probably want to put in just half a teaspoon of it, and then you couple with more different kinds of ingredients to make it more nutritious. So you still can have it, but not so much of it. Okay, so like what I mentioned, like what you also have pointed out, that instant noodles, packet potato chips, that these are easily, sometimes we don't really tell, because once our salt tolerance have been established, and the more saltier we want crave for food to be. So hence, we need to be more conscious about our salt tolerance and try to bring it down. If not, we just keep going higher and higher in terms of our sodium requirements. Yes, Japanese live a long life. That's true. That's actually a very good statement that you mentioned as well, because I was just doing a quick study on Mediterranean versus Japanese diet. And they found that Japanese do live a very long life, and found that they do have very low amounts, like, in terms of their chronic condition, they do have higher mortality. But the thing is, with Japanese, if you look at their cycle in terms of their food choices, they probably only have these items when they're much younger, and when they are older, they tend to fall back to their traditional diets. So they do have a good balance of those traditional diets, and also like those kind of processed items. And looking at their meals, they tend to not follow too much of the Westerner diets. So that means they also go back to omega-3s, which I'll share later on. A lot of food items that help them to manage it long run. Good statement. I like that. Thank you very much for sharing.